You might think you've witnessed every sinister moment horror cinema has to offer, but some terrors slip between the cracks, hiding not in the shadows but in the signals themselves. Certain films, during their first broadcasts or limited screenings, encountered unexplained interruptions, audio crackling, images flickering, and faint whispers threading through the soundtrack. It wasn't equipment failure, nor was it deliberate editing. It was something else, something the original creators never captured on tape. These disturbances were subtle yet unnerving. Viewers recall hearing distorted voices, overlapping dialogue, glimpsing shapes that were never on the set, and seeing frames tear in ways the film's masters could not reproduce. Broadcast engineers, after exhaustive testing, could not explain the anomalies. The glitches happened only in initial transmissions, vanishing in every replay. Yet for those who witnessed them, the experience left a lingering sense that the films themselves were resisting being seen as intended. Tonight, we explore 15 horror movies that became infamous, not for what they showed, but for what slipped through the cracks. Broadcasts that seem to carry a life of their own. These are not just stories of technical mishaps, they are tales where the medium itself became a vessel for unease. Moments meant to be contained on screen bled into reality, leaving audiences to question whether they were watching fiction or something else entirely. Step carefully, pay attention to the gaps. Let's uncover the hidden whispers in the static. Fact 1. The Legend of Lizzie Borden, 1975. The legend of Lizzie Borden recounts the infamous murder case, yet its broadcast history added a layer of inexplicable dread. During its premiere, viewers reported milliseconds of signal bleed, blurred corridors, shadows moving independently of actors, fleeting frames appearing and disappearing in perfect synchronization with tense moments. Engineers found nothing abnormal. The master tape was pristine. The anomalies appeared only in the original transmission, aligning with scenes depicting accusation and guilt. Observers felt the film's themes spilling into reality, making them question whether they were witnessing a simple broadcast error or something more sinister. The Legend of Lizzie Borden demonstrates that sometimes horror escapes the screen. Images that were never meant to be seen managed to flicker into consciousness, leaving a trace that no rerun could replicate. Fact 2. Kolchak, The Night Stalker, Demon in Lace, 1975. Though an episode rather than a feature, Demon in Lace became infamous for unexplained broadcast oddities. Viewers noted that musical cues warped subtly whenever the demon appeared, distorting pitch just enough to be unsettling. Technicians reviewed the original tape. No anomalies existed. The distortion followed the demon's presence precisely, creating a sense that the air itself reacted to its manifestation. Some claimed faint scraping noises accompanied the warped music, almost imperceptible but deeply unsettling. The anomaly disappeared in subsequent airings. The episode's narrative revolves around illusions taking form in the real world. The broadcast glitches enhanced that experience, making the viewers feel as if the episode itself had become possessed, a performance of intrusion that could not be scripted or edited. Fact 3. The Stone Tape, 1972. The Stone Tape blends science and the supernatural in a narrative about recording and replaying residual hauntings. During its earliest broadcast, viewers reported sudden bursts of static synchronized with the scientists' experiments. The master tapes were untouched. The interference appeared only during transmission. The static occurred in short, precise bursts, cutting through dialogue and amplifying tension. Witnesses described it as an answering presence, as though the environment itself was responding to the characters' attempts to measure the unmeasurable. The film's premise, emotional and traumatic energy imprinting itself onto space, became literal through the broadcast anomaly. What is most unnerving is how the signal made audiences participants in the experiment. The story of haunted architecture seemed to extend beyond the screen, suggesting that some echoes cannot remain contained, reaching into the viewer's space without permission. Fact 4. The Ashtree, 1975. M.R. James's adaptation. The Ashtree is already steeped in spectral dread, but its earliest BBC broadcasts featured an unexplained ripple across frames containing the cursed tree itself. Engineers blamed transmission lines or temperature, but the anomaly only appeared when the tree was dominant in the shot. Viewers noticed the ripple moving like a slow, deliberate breath, almost organic, occasionally revealing indistinct forms within the distortion. All subsequent reruns and recordings were stable. The effect vanished entirely outside the first broadcast. The Ashtree explores guilt and lingering curses, and the broadcast anomaly rendered the tree into a living presence. The ripple felt less like a technical fault and more like a warning. Some routes extend beyond perception, and some stories refuse to remain confined to the screen. Fact 5. The Possessed, 1977. A standard exorcism narrative on paper, The Possessed became notorious for its broadcast anomalies. During the first televised airings, high-pitched static pierced the soundtrack precisely during scenes of prayer or invocation. The interference was subtle but unmistakable, creating an audible tension that didn't exist in the master recording. Engineers verified the tapes there was nothing wrong, yet the static consistently aligned with moments of ritual, producing a sensation that the signal itself was aware of the story unfolding. Viewers reported hearing whispers embedded beneath the static tones that didn't belong to any actor or score. The Possessed already depicts spiritual conflict, but the anomalies made the confrontation tangible. The broadcast turned passive viewing into an immersive experience, where the unseen forces depicted on screen seemed to reach out into reality, reminding audiences that some presences cannot be contained by film or tape. Fact 6. The Norless Tapes, 1973. The Norless Tapes began as an ambitious pilot exploring occult mysteries, but its earliest broadcasts developed a reputation of their own. During the initial airings, viewers reported a peculiar fluttering distortion whenever the titular tapes were shown on screen. The effect resembled whispered voices layered under the soundtrack, precise yet incomprehensible. Engineers checked the master copy and found it flawless. The phenomenon appeared only during live transmission. The series' narrative revolves around a missing writer documenting supernatural events, and the broadcast anomaly mirrored that fragmented reality. Viewers felt as if the signal itself was reacting to the story, cracking under the weight of unseen forces. The timing was exact. It only occurred when the tapes were manipulated on screen, never during dialogue or unrelated sequences. The glitch reinforced the film's themes of hidden knowledge and unseen entities, transforming passive observation into a tense experience. The Norless Tapes reminded audiences that some stories can bleed into the medium itself, and sometimes the whispers you hear aren't in the script, they're in the signal. Fact 7. Don't Look Now, 1973. Celebrated as one of the most visually striking psychological horrors, Don't Look Now manipulates color and perception. During some initial screenings, reels momentarily desaturated, leaving only reds vivid on the screen, while the rest of the frame faded into muted gray. Technicians insisted the prints were in perfect condition. These brief color shifts occurred exclusively during sequences where red motifs highlighted memory and trauma. Audience members described the effect as jarring, almost supernatural, intensifying the tension. Projectors remained stable. There was no electrical or mechanical cause. The desaturation mirrored the film's exploration of perception and grief, transforming it from a cinematic technique into a tangible experience for viewers. In those fleeting seconds, reality itself seemed to follow the film's unsettling logic, making horror both intimate and inescapable. Fact 8. Dark Night of the Scarecrow, 1981. A cult classic of rural suspense, Dark Night of the Scarecrow unnerved audiences with a silent figure exacting retribution. Yet during early television airings, a low-frequency hum accompanied the Scarecrow's still moments, subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to create an unsettling bodily awareness. Engineers confirmed the prints and equipment were flawless. The hum appeared only during broadcast. The hum synced precisely with the Scarecrow's appearances, enhancing the sense of watchfulness. Viewers described a physical sensation, as though the figure itself had pressed into their space. The broadcast distortion aligned unnervingly with the film's themes of observation and judgment. While the Scarecrow remains a fictional force, the anomalies turned passive viewing into a participatory dread. The airwaves seemed complicit, making the audience feel the weight of vengeance as if it existed outside the frame. Fact 9. The Screaming Woman, 1972. The Screaming Woman appears at first as a straightforward TV thriller, but its earliest broadcasts gained an eerie reputation. Viewers reported hearing a second, faint scream layered beneath the actress's lines, a sound that wasn't on the master tape. Technicians reviewed the reels thoroughly. Everything was intact, yet during the first airing, the additional scream emerged fleetingly, leaving audiences unnerved and unsure if their minds were playing tricks. The narrative focuses on a woman discovering cries from a grave, exploring the terror of being unheard. The phantom scream intensified that theme, suggesting the cries themselves had leaked into reality. Viewers recalled whispers intertwined with the distorted audio, further deepening the sense of intrusion. Subsequent replays showed no anomalies. The glitch seemed to exist solely in that initial broadcast, as though the film briefly extended its story into the viewer's space. Sometimes horror isn't confined to a screen. Sometimes it speaks directly to those paying attention. Fact 10. Don't Go to Sleep. 1982. Set in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Don't Go to Sleep unnerves with subtle family tension and latent menace. Yet its early broadcasts brought something far stranger than the plot. Abrupt gray screens lasting 3 to 4 seconds during pivotal confrontations, accompanied by faint, distorted audio beneath. Prints and tapes were flawless. Networks could not reproduce the anomaly. The interruptions coincided with moments of extreme psychological distress in the story. Audience members described a feeling of being observed, as if the silence itself carried intent. Replays showed no disruption. The glitch existed only in the initial broadcast. These ephemeral absences mirrored the narrative's exploration of memory gaps and repressed trauma, making the viewer's experience a fragmentary form of fear. Horror rarely arrives in silence, but in Don't Go to Sleep, the void itself became a participant, leaving a mark no replay could erase. Fact 11. The Power. 1984. The Power revolves around an ancient Aztec amulet and unseen forces that manipulate reality. During early test broadcasts, a persistent low-frequency static emerged every time the amulet appeared on screen. Engineers reviewed the master tape. Pristine, the effect occurred only during live transmission. The static followed the amulet's movements with eerie precision, rising and fading, almost like a suppressed voice trying to be heard. Viewers described it as a palpable presence pressing against the audio, heightening the film's supernatural undertones. The alignment of glitch and narrative created a unique, unsettling synergy, turning ordinary scenes into moments of psychological intrusion. In a film that deals with unseen manipulation, the broadcast distortion felt almost intentional. The amulet's power seemed to extend beyond the story, making the audience aware of forces that could not be contained within the frame. Horror, in this case, escaped the boundaries of the screen. Fact 12. The Next Victim. 1971. The Next Victim presents itself as a tense giallo, filled with meticulous cinematography and creeping dread. During the earliest regional broadcasts in Europe, a peculiar desynchronization occurred. In the first murder sequence, the killer's footsteps arrived too soon. The victim's scream slightly delayed, stretching a fraction of a second into an unsettling loop. Engineers examined the reel's flawless. The anomaly happened only during the live broadcast, disappearing entirely in rerun. The film's narrative thrives on the instability of perception, and this glitch inadvertently enhanced that tension. Observers reported faint, untraceable sounds underlying the scene, breathing or whispers that weren't on the tape. It was as if the story itself had bent the timeline, briefly invading reality. For viewers, the sequence felt like a fragmented ritual. What was meant to be fiction became a fleeting, participatory horror. Sometimes the medium itself can echo the themes of the story, making the audience complicit in its unease. The Next Victim might not have been on screen, it might have been in the signal itself. Fact 13. Haunts. 1976. Haunts is a psychological thriller immersed in rural unease and suppressed trauma. Early screenings became notorious for sudden, inexplicable projection jumps during scenes of emotional intensity. Prints and reels were checked repeatedly, no defects existed. Yet audiences witnessed frames skipping or snapping at precise moments, particularly when the protagonist confronted her inner fears. Some viewers reported fleeting images between frames, shadowy forms that didn't belong to any actor or prop. Technicians could not replicate the anomalies, and recordings of the film played perfectly afterward. The timing of the disruptions suggested a thematic resonance with the film's exploration of repressed trauma. By amplifying the film's sense of instability, these broadcast anomalies transformed Haunts from a standard thriller into a haunting experience. The audience's perception became part of the narrative itself, reinforcing the film's message that unresolved fears can impose themselves on reality, sometimes in ways no one can predict. Fact 14. The Cat Creature. 1973. The Cat Creature appeared to be a straightforward late-night TV thriller, a resurrected Egyptian spirit wreaking havoc. But the initial broadcast carried an unexplainable visual oddity. Certain scenes darkened far beyond the intended cinematography, shadows shifting in ways that weren't captured in the master copy. Viewers described movements lurking in corners, figures appearing between frames that did not exist in the film. Engineers found the source untraceable. The darkening occurred only during the first airing, never during subsequent screenings or master tape reviews. The anomaly focused exclusively on sequences where the cat creature prowled, as if the signal itself was reacting to the supernatural events unfolding on screen. The cat creature's themes of cursed objects reclaiming power unexpectedly mirrored the broadcast glitch. The darkness seemed almost sentient, warning viewers that the ancient force depicted might be more than fictional. By the end of the night, audiences were left unsettled, not by the story alone, but by the ephemeral intrusion in the broadcast, a fleeting sense that the horror had transcended its intended medium. Fact 15. The Spell. 1977. What seemed like a routine made-for-TV horror soon became a broadcast enigma. In the first airing of The Spell, viewers reported a strange audio distortion just minutes into the film. The opening chant warped into a low, metallic hum that wasn't part of the soundtrack. Engineers examined the master tape. Flawless. The glitch occurred only during the initial transmission, vanishing in subsequent reruns. The film's plot revolves around a tormented adolescent girl whose repressed anger manifests in supernatural ways. Yet that night, it felt as if her rage seeped beyond the story, spilling into the audio itself. Witnesses described a whisper overlapping the dialogue, faint yet undeniably there, uttering words that were never in the script. Network staff explained it as a temporary modulation surge, though the precision and timing defied technical explanation. The Spell's eerie broadcast anomaly created an unintended synergy with its narrative, a story about unseen forces influencing reality, suddenly mirrored by a real-world signal distortion. The result lingered long after the show ended, a reminder that sometimes the terror isn't on the screen, sometimes it arrives through the medium itself. Bonus film: The Vanishing Room. 1988. Before we wrap, here's one more horror film you need to add to your list. The Vanishing Room is an obscure late 80s thriller, notorious for its scattered regional broadcasts that carried unexplained anomalies. The film follows a couple inheriting an old boarding house, discovering that one particular room appears and disappears unpredictably. Yet what caught the attention of viewers was not the story itself, but a strange ghost frame visible at the start of every scene within the room. The translucent image appeared a second before the actors entered, a fleeting glimpse that seemed out of place. Engineers examined the master tape. Flawless. Nothing in the print could account for it. The effect occurred only during live broadcasts, disappearing in all subsequent airings. Viewers described it as a warning, a moment when the house itself seemed to step forward, almost aware of being watched. The Vanishing Room's narrative explores instability, memory, and the terror of spaces that defy expectation. The broadcast anomaly amplified that unease, making the audience feel the room's presence before the story caught up. The fleeting ghost frame was more than a glitch. It was an intrusion into perception, a brief moment where fiction bled into reality. Some rooms are merely empty, some are haunted, and some announce themselves for a heartbeat before retreating. The Vanishing Room reminds us that in horror, sometimes the medium itself becomes part of the terror. If these broadcast anomalies unsettled you, consider following us as we continue to uncover the hidden corners of horror cinema. Countless films have slipped through the cracks, some by accident, some by forces unknown. Which of tonight's distorted signals disturbed you the most? Were they merely technical errors, or glimpses of something that refused to stay contained? Share your thoughts and let the discussion unfold in the shadow.